Hello everyone, this is Rakesh Kapilas and I welcome you all again in my today's video. And I hope you all are fit and fine at your places. And I also hope that you all are making best practices of all these notes and videos provided to you people. So now today we will discuss class 11's source of finance is the topic we are doing, and we will move further to know about the sources of the finance individually. In our previous videos, we have gone through what is the meaning of finance, how you can categorize the finance on the basis of time factor or on the basis of ownership factor, and what were the different types of features of the finance, right? So now today we will discuss the two very important, major and vital component of sources of finance, that is preference share and equity share. So before understanding the preference share and equity share, let us understand what is share. If whole of the capital of company is divided into some small parts of equal value, then each part will call share. If whole of the capital means what you can call authorized capital, registered capital, nominal capital is being divided into some small parts of equal value, then each part, each denomination of the value is called share. And basically shares are of two types. One is preference share and second is equity share. Now, in order to understand which shares will called preference and which will called equity, you have to understand two things. Why a person invest in shares? The very first purpose for investing the amount in share is return. So the part of the profit which is given by the company to the shareholder is called dividend, right? A person used to take the risk by investing the money into shares. So, and by doing that, that person also finance the company, and in return the company give him dividend. And second, one day definitely his amount will be returned by the company, and that return of the money will called redemption of the capital of the shares. So if any share having the preference at these two times, like basically we have two shares, preference and equity. Like suppose company is going to give the dividend, so those shares which having the preference to get the dividend or preference at the time of redemption, those shares will called preference share. And those shares which will not have any sort of preference, they will called equity shares. Simply saying, those shares which are not preference share are called equity share, and preference shares are those shares which get the preference at two times, at the time of payment of dividend and at the time of redemption of their amount, redemption of their capital, right? And equity shares are those shares which are not preference share, but let me tell you, equity shareholders are the real owner of the company. The preference shares status is just like a secured creditors. Okay, now what may be the types of preference share you will find? The very first is convertible and non-convertible. If any preference shareholder having right to convert its shares into equity share, then he will called convertible preference share. And if he having no right, then non-convertible preference share. Second, redeemable and non-redeemable preference share. Redeemable preference share is that share whose amount will be redeemed by the company within a specific period, like within 5 years, within 6 years, but before winding of the company, before liquidation of the company. कंपनी के बंद होने से पहले इनका पैसा इनको रिटर्न किया जाएगा, and those people whose money will be returned only at the end of the life of company or at the winding up of the company, those shareholders will called non-redeemable preference share. Third is cumulative, as its name suggests, cumulative, cumulation. This is that type of preference share. Suppose if any of the year company could not pay the dividend because of the shortage of profit. So if any shareholder having the right in next year to get the next year dividend along with the previous which was not given to that shareholder, that will be called cumulative. Like 2010 का dividend 100 rupees था, that was not given to the preference shareholder because of the limited amount of the profit, and next year if he having the right to get the 100 area for the previous year, he will call cumulative. If he having no right, non-cumulative. Participable and non-participable. Participable preference shares are those shares which having the right to participate in that profit which left after making all types of allocation to preference shares. प्रेफरेंस शेयर्स को सब कुछ देने के बाद जो प्रॉफिट बच जाता है, दैट प्रॉफिट बिलोंग टू इक्विटी शेयर, एंड इफ दैट प्रेफरेंस शेयर होल्डर हैविंग राइट टू participate to get the share in that residual, that remaining profit, he will call participable. If he having no right, he will call non-participable. This is the type of preference share. Now we will discuss what are the different types of advantages a company will get or a investor will get investing in preference share. Suppose as an investor, if I am investing in preference share, what advantage I will get? First of all, regular income, because as compared to equity share, first preference is being given to the preference shareholder in order to give the return. So comparatively, having the advantage to get the regular income. Second is preference. Another advantage I will get as a preference shareholder, that I will be given the preference to get the dividend. I will be given the preference to get the dividend as compared to equity shareholder. Third, I may have the right to participate in residual or remaining profit, right? These are the advantages, or you can say advantages as an investor. Now I will talk about what are the different types of advantage a company will get if that is getting the money by way of preference share. The very first is no interference, because all the preference shareholder don't have the right to participate in each and every managerial activity. They having right only to participate in that matter only where their interest is being affected by any of the activity of company. Second, these shares can be issued without any security. These can be, you can say, without any mortgage, without any security, they can be issued. So company will feel really easiness to get the amount by way of preference share. Then less burden on company as compared to debentures, which we will discuss in the next lecture. Company having very small amount of burden as compared to debenture and as compared to other sources of the finance to pay the return. The last, in order to issue these shares, preference shares, the flotation cost. What is flotation cost? Flotation cost is that cost which company have to make in order to issue the shares. शेयर्स को इशू करने से रिलेटिंग कंपनी को जो भी लीगल एक्सपेंसेस, जो भी डॉक्यूमेंट्री चार्जेस करने पड़ते हैं, दोज विल कॉल्ड फ्लोटेशन कॉस्ट, एंड एज कंपेयर टू द इक्विटी शेयर, द फ्लोटेशन कॉस्ट इन दैट कैटेगरी इज रियली लो. कम टू द नाउ equity shares. Equity shares, those shares which are not preference, they are called equity shares simply. Now what are the advantages? Number one advantage for the, you can say, investor. If I am an investor, I am going to invest the money. Suppose I have invested in the company's equity share, then what advantage I will get? Number one, I will be the real owner of the company, because equity shareholders are the considered as real owner of the concern. Second, more dividend, because suppose if plenty of profit is there, then preference shareholder will be given only a fixed amount of you can say a regular or fixed amount of dividend, and remaining all residual profit will belong to equity shareholder. That's why they may get plenty of profit. Then third advantage I can have, I having a right to interfere in the matter. I will interfere, I will give the suggestion, and I can check any of the accounts book, I can go anywhere, I can do anywhere, because I will be considered as a real owner. This is the advantage for the shareholder. Then come to the company. Company के लिए क्या advantage होगा? The very first is it is a fixed capital. Why it is fixed capital? Because once a share, if equity shares are being issued, they are for long period. They are for 6, 7, 8, 9 year period. Again advantage, No need to issue as any security as it was in case of preference share. You can issue these equity share without any security. Then no fixed burden, because equity shareholders will be given the dividend only when there is profit. If there is no profit, there is no burden to give them any sort of you can say dividend. These are the advantages of equity shareholder for investor as well as for the company. Now we will discuss the disadvantages of this source of finance, preference share and equity share. Right? The very first disadvantage in case of preference share for the investor, that will he having no right to interfere anywhere. He having no right anywhere, right? And that will become the advantage because he having the right to interfere in any matter. On the another side, in case of preference share, investor having a small disadvantage that he will be given a very fixed amount of dividend, while in case of this equity shareholder, he will be given a plenty of big amount of you can say dividend. Right? Now the next disadvantage we can have that is if we will talk about preference share, its disadvantage is that it is a flexible source of income. You can collect, you can gather a very small amount or limited amount of the finance of the capital by preference share, while you can get a huge amount by way of you can say equity shareholders. Now one by one I will discuss what may be the you can say, you all can see what may be the disadvantage in that category. After analyzing all these things, we will discuss about the disadvantages of these two sources of finance. This is preference and this is equity. First of all, we will discuss the disadvantages of what you can say preference shares for investors. For investors or for shareholders, the disadvantage means they don't have the any participation in management activities or in the remaining profit, because only participable preference share having this right and all other preference share having no right to participate in any of the remaining residual profit, while no preference share holder having a right to participate in any of the managerial activity except where their interest is being hurt or interest is being affected by the company. This is the first disadvantage for the preference share. Come to the disadvantage for the company. It having a fixed burden, because in certain cases, like we were talking about cumulative preference shares, company have to pay a fixed amount of dividend to the shareholder, so that will become as a fixed burden for the company. And second, sometime more funds collected by way of preference share is being opposed or being criticized by the equity shareholder, because as much as preference share will be issued, the share of profit which may be given to the equity shareholder, that can be retained, that can be adjusted only between preference share, and the lesser amount of profit will be available for the equity shareholders. This is the disadvantage of preference share. Come to the disadvantage of equity share. The very first disadvantage for the investor, suppose I am the investor and I have invested in the equity shares, then what disadvantage I will get? The very first, I will not be given any sort of preference at the time of payment of dividend or at the time of redemption of my amount. So preference will be given to the preference shares, and first of all dividend will be given to them. If any amount of profit remains, then I will be given, otherwise I don't have any right to get any sort of preference. Second is, sometime in case of recession means when the profits are minimized, the costs are all time lowest, then in that case, because of the scarcity or because of the you can say shortage in decline in the profit available is being adjusted only up to the preference share, and equity share will not get any share, so they may have the loss in case of recession. Come to the disadvantage for a company. The very first disadvantage for the company, that in order to issue the equity share as compared to issue, the flotation cost is high. The cost to issue the share, preference share, is lower as compared to the cost to issue the equity shares. In order to issue the equity share, you have to incur a huge amount of flotation cost. The last disadvantage of this equity share for the company, that is all these equity shareholder having the right to participate, so they all time interfere in all the matters. Sometimes shareholder used to you can say interfere in such a manner that it interrupt the normal functioning of the company. So this is all about the source of finance, equity share and preference share, regarding its preference shares types, advantage of the preference share, and disadvantage and advantages of the equity share. And in next of our video, we will try to discuss next of the source of the finance. Thank you very much.